Welcome to Dissident Canada. My name is Tyler, and man, the budget is a thing. It's it's a thing. Um, there's a lot of conservatives being pissed off about it, and fine and dandy. You're right to your own opinions. I don't like it one bit. Just pointing that out. I mean, let me rephrase that. There are parts of the budget that I find acceptable. Um, and I would, if I was in charge, I would do something similar, if not the exact same. But uh, they're pissed, and I guess they haven't looked at former conservative budgets because if you like discount how hot the deficit is running, and I'm gonna get into that. It's running way hotter than it thinks. Um, like the general idea of this isn't that far off from again a like Harper budget. Just everything's blown up way bigger because that's how debt-based economies work. Um, that kind of just how things work. Um, and the leader of the bloc, who said he was going to vote this down, came out and said it's a red conservative budget, and people were freaking out about that, being like, no, how dare you? Stephen Harper only had $1 billion deficit, and it was like at the time that was a big freaking deficit, by the way. Um, but no, like if you look through the the budget, the proposed budget, and you look at the spending, it's like, and you think of how, or you compare it to what the conservatives were doing and have proposed, it's Newton's third law. It is a direct opposite. Like it's not, because Newton's third law is for every action there's an equal opposite reaction. This is the direct opposite reaction to a conservative bill. It's not the antithesis, more say socialism. I mean that's in there, but like if you look at the actual spending they're proposing, it's like infrastructure, productivity, competitiveness, defense, security, housing. How is that different from what Pierre was talking about earlier in the year? Now the details vary greatly, all right, because this budget is trying to be everything to everybody all at once. Like, and we saw this with the proposed national building projects that have been proposed. Like you've got critical minerals, ports. Um, oh God, what else is there? Uh, Carbon capture site, and then in the east, a wind farm because that plays to the certain crowds. It's like, wow, is this everything to everybody at all at once, and everybody kind of hates it. Um, like there's parts in this bill that I'm fine with. Like the infrastructure spending is like 100 billion or whatever. It's like Canada needs that. Specifically, like if you wanted to move away from the United States or build a robust domestic economy, which we don't have, you have to spend money on roads and specifically highways. Like there was a post that I saw on X like a month ago. I should have saved it. And I really should have went off on the people who were being stupid about it. But the post was um talking, it was someone who's like never gone across the Trans Canada Highway, saying like Canada doesn't have a robust interstate highway system like the United States. We've mostly got just the Trans Canada Highway, which is mostly a 2-lane highway, and it's kind of pathetic. To the Canadians out there who have not been to the United States and experienced the interstate system, it's fabulous, by the way. Okay? The amount of highways in the United States is ridiculously awesome for getting around. All right? I live in the Kitchener-Waterloo region. All right? There is the 401 and the 8 that I would drive. That's it. All right? If I want to go to Hamilton, I take the 401 and then I get on another 8 highway. Or no, I get on the 6 to Hamilton. And the 6, how more people do not die on that specific highway, I do not understand. I'm thinking of a very specific spot in which you would suspect there would be a whole crap ton of deaths. But no, most of that is on the 401. All right? Like, it's basically the highways I have. Like, if you go down to Toronto far enough, you can hop on the private highway, which used to be public, the 407. And then, once you get in near Toronto, you can get in like the Gardiner. There's also the 403. There's a few other 400 series if you're going, say, down to Windsor to the United States. But like, most of that is provincial spending. All right. And again, the Trans-Canada Highway is the highway for getting goods across or just traveling across Canada. You want to see what a highway system looks like? There are multiple maps on the internet that compare Canada's roads to America's roads. You can also filter in some of them by just highways. And you can go to places like, say, Georgia, and just the forethought in planning compared to Canada blows everybody away. Like, for me, all right, if I have to go to Toronto, there is a massive amount of time I have to put into planning the trip around traffic, because there is one highway, one real alternate route, and then 3 back ways you can take. But those 3 back ways take 2.5 to 3.5 hours to get to where I live. Okay? So it is a hassle to drive to Toronto. And if you have to go past Toronto, it's an ever-living nightmare, because unlike in the United States, where there are highway systems that are called ring roads that go around cities. So if you're not going into the city, you can go around it and go past it. Toronto doesn't have that shit. And like, where I live, from Windsor to Toronto, is basically the vast majority of the trucking and just shipping in general that happens between Canada and the United States. And there was no forethought put into this. There was no thought whatsoever. So in the infrastructure, I'm absolutely in favor of that. Like, we've also got 2.5 rail lines running east-west. And the half is in there because it's generous. But also in infrastructure, I dug through this budget. It's somewhat okay. They include funding for colleges and universities. Rip that out. Okay? Productivity and competitiveness, I understand what they're trying to do. They don't know how to do it. Like, basically what productivity and competitiveness is, hey, we're going to put money into businesses so that they can compete in the global market. It's a bad idea. You can do that, but they don't know how to do that. Basically, just if you look at the budget, think of that as a money laundering scam. The defense and security, absolutely agree with. We need to do that. Just a thing, kind of need to do that. The housing, I disagree. I kind of disagree with it. I'm going to talk about that in a video. I'm going to make a video after this for Friday about what my budget would have more been, of where I would allocate funds, and what I would like to see parties promise as a populist. I'll give you a populist budget, but what they're going to do is they're just going to be oh, multifamily, we'll just pile into that. That's such a bad thing. Basically, the general idea of this budget, or there's one other thing I want to talk about. The spending less to invest more, that's just pure insanity propaganda. It's what the objective there is to have the federal government, the day-to-day operations, all right, what you would normally fund, paychecks for employees, pension contributions, servicing the debt. The idea is to get that down into revenue territory, so the amount that taxes bring in a year, so that they're not deficit spending to run the government. They're just deficit spending to finance big and other big small projects. All right, that's the general idea of that slogan. It's horrendous slogan. I understand what they're saying, and I kind of agree with it. You do have to make cuts to the federal government. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. Um, and the workforce is the problem. You have to slowly roll that back. I do like, though, in one of the annexes, it talks about that, and it uses this phrase. The budget has this phrase of yes, we're not going to make cuts, and it's not reductions, but it's like you need to remove 15% of your operating budgets. Get fucked, and it's the most polite way of saying it, and it is corporate speak, peak corporate speak from the government. I love it. But like, the general idea of this budget is relatively solid. As I have said on multiple things, if you want Canada to get better, you can't just rip away regulations and curb government spending. That's not going to work. All right? You are just going to create a liquidity crisis and ensure that Canada looks even more shaky than it is, unless you can really get outside country buy-in so that you don't have to do it. But if you strip some of the regulations, you curb some of the spending, and then you do some of the projects that need to be done, and you foot the bill, at least some of it, okay? You will bypass the untrustworthiness, and you'll get buy-in, and it'll work. Of course, there's a whole section in here dedicated to AI, which is just nonsense, because AI will never really work because nobody knows how to build it. They are just brute forcing it. There's changes to the banking system in here that smell very much like, hey, we're going to prep for a central bank controlled currency, whether that's like a CBDC or just straight up taking control of the ledgers of banks. There's a lot of stuff that works to that. There's also there's a few deregulatory measures for the banking system to just let them grow a credit bubble. They likely won't, because we're at a point where risk is just insane. They would have to get government guarantees. They'll probably get them in the back end. Like, the other thing that's crazy about this budget is at the end. I think it's Annex 1. If you read through that, it's basically just an economic report. And it's like the entire summary of the report. I will sum it for you. There is an extremely narrow line we can walk where this budget works. Okay? Or works well enough. Okay? But where we are in the euro-dollar cycle, the credit cycles, and all that shit doesn't account for it. Like, this budget, all right, is something like a $550 billion budget, Canadian, loony budget, all right, with 78 billion being deficit, all right. What that doesn't include is another $500 billion, or $500 billion loonies, in spending for long-term national building projects. That doesn't show up anywhere in the budget. Like, projects that are going to take 5, 10, 15, 20 years, they don't show up. They're being proposed otherwise. So this is an actual $1 trillion budget with what they are saying, and it's 493 pages long, but with like the pictures and table of contents, it's like 450-ish. Okay, and there's like some with the one report that I mentioned. It has like in it's got Jesus, what's it called? At the end of a paper, sources. It's got some sources and citations and stuff, which is, you know, good. Like that's good. Source your stuff. But what's really insane is if like you go to Appendix 4 and you look, like, this is the debt management plan. This is where it gets really wonky, okay? Because like one of the first things they talk about is the credit rating of Canada, which, if you believe it's like the equivalent of a AAA or A plus plus, you're out to lunch. That's gonna change soon. There's also a chart on public debt charges and the forecast, and that forecast straight up shows you that they think and they know. Okay, specifically Carney. I believe Carney had a massive hand in generally drafting Annex 4 debt management strategy because that's who he is. That's his background. Um, Anyways, so in that debt forecast, like it's barely up. Like, so the servicing of the debt is basically what they're talking about, and so that just means the rates are going to zero, and they're basically projecting that the Canadian maple bond curve will be somewhere between 0 to maybe 1.5%, 2% at the 30 year. It goes into their borrowing thing, and I don't see how this is realistically going to happen and not cause a partial sovereign debt crisis where you get the long end of the curve rates spiking, because what they're trying to do is they're going to run hot on T-bills. So they're going to issue 1 year and below bonds at like a higher and higher rate, which is going to accrue a lot of debt really quickly. Now, the only thing that's going good for them on that is that the bonds that the rates are going to fall and continue to fall, even though they were up a little bit, they're down a little bit. Immediate reaction for this from, because banks were watching this budget go pop. You can see the 2 year and the 10 year maple bond just start nosediving after going accelerating, and then just bond like into the budget. Budget comes out, people start reading it. It was like, oh, okay, they're seeing no growth whatsoever. But like the debt composition, all right, is where it gets weird, because they're trying to get as much of the debt into the longer end of the curve, the 2, the 5, the 10, and the 30. Most of that, when they look at the composition, is going to end up in like 2 year bonds, which is, again, front loading the short end of the curve is ridiculous. Like ridiculous. Like they're talking about a total domestic issuance in the fiscal 2025 to 2026 of $609 billion for total bonds. Like, that's insane. Like, the idea is to ramp down eventually the short end of the curve, but I don't see how they do that. Okay, with one, demand for the short end of the curve being extremely high, and like they're gonna run into cash flow problems because they're gonna have, you know, things that come up in the next just 6 months that are going to be massive road bumps. Like, it's a nightmare, their debt composition. And again, their projection of the total market is like 1.5 trillion by like the end of the decade, which, with all their other projects that aren't in the budget, we're at $2+ trillion. And here's the real interesting thing. TD, the date of this recording is November 5th. TD today, okay, came out and is like, hey, we're closing down a lot of stores or a lot of physical locations in the United States. We're gonna pull back from the United States because we're running into problems. People were making assumptions that it was about the massive money laundering fine they had to pay. This screams TD is having problems, and they're cutting where they can. So my response on X when I found this out was like, so this massive budget does not, in any Canada fantasy land that it paints, does not include bank bailouts. Now, Canada did not have that problem to a large extent in the GFC. That is no longer the case when you have massive leverage, like on the balance sheet. Like when you talk off balance sheet, we have no idea. Like I think TD specifically is leveraged to all hell off their balance sheet. Like I'm fairly sure. Like, again, like I'm scrolling through this budget, and like I keep seeing bank, like, completion of the consumer-driven banking legislative framework. That was that open banking thing that I terribly hate. And, creating a regulated space for stablecoins, helping credit unions grow and compete, gathering small banks access for brokered deposits, or strengthening. Like, all of this sounds like, hey, we're screwing with the banking system so we can supplement control, especially the open banking framework, because you're immediately creating an API in which that it's connected to crown corporations, those being the Bank of Canada, the government's mortgage thing, and like some other ones that really don't all that matter. The big one is you are fully integrating banks into the Bank of Canada. Like, again, the API is basically connecting all the consumer accounts across banks, okay? So that, all your information, you can go from one bank to the other, and you can, price shop and all that good stuff that people are saying. But what you are doing is linking the fucking ledgers together, creating one goddamn unified ledger. In essence, it's an ad hoc way of doing it, and you're only a few fucking steps away from the Bank of Canada coming in and saying, you guys can't be trusted with your own ledgers. Why don't you store that at our place? We'll take all the risk. And then they control the fucking banking system 100%. Or as close to 100% as you can. And the banks are going to spend worse than drunken sailors because they're already at that point. Okay? Like, everything that has to do with banking changes, I'm mostly against, because making changes to the banking system has to be slow, methodical, and extremely thought out to the nth degree. Because small changes destroy shit. Like, nobody thought that derivatives would become a quadrillion, if not a quintillion size problem. Yes, that is an accurate statement, saying that it is a quadrillion problem. It is 1,000 trillions of a problem globally. But of the things I like cutting the government, I love that. I absolutely love that. The only thing I have a problem with is that they're cutting it by 15% and not saying, hey, we're going to cut it by 50% because we grew it by 60%. Or like saying halving the current federal workforce when they've basically doubled it in the Liberals' term in office is not a bad thing. Okay? Going for a 60% cut is not a bad thing. All right? But like, yeah, this budget is so schizophrenic. It's got like, you know, good general populist ideas that, you know, you can get away with and people like, and then it's just got like banking nonsense of, hey, we're gonna sneak in control this way, like it, or hey, we're gonna build useless wind farms out east because apparently out east wants to kill birds and pretend they're producing power. I don't know. Why not just run a pipeline to them and have a nice, fairly clean, what's it called, nat gas power facility and bring power way down? Why not build more modular reactors? I mean, they do have that, but why not ramp it up to an insane degree? Put them up north and just run power lines everywhere. Because guess what happens when you have nuclear power? You pump out so much power, you no longer give a flying F about anything remotely concerned with efficiency because you just have the power. And the reason I say up north is because there's a smaller population, okay? And, all right, it's small population, large bits of land, and it's cold. And you can put it in access to extreme cold water, very cold all year round. And then, if you have a catastrophic meltdown, you have access to freezing fucking cold water that you can neutralize the problem with. Like, you just have to stop caring about stuff. Plus, all right, with extremely cheap power readily available in those northern provinces, you can actually run massive mining operations up there relatively cheaply. Because again, power is now very affordable. But, you know, a lot of that stuff's going to be in tomorrow's video about, hey, what would I put in my budget? Because, like, what proposed plans would I put in there? Because, you know, why not? What would a populist budget look like, in theory? Anyways, that's the video for today. That's my thoughts on this budget. I highly recommend, you know, go take a look. Now, again, it's almost 500 pages with everything included. But you can bounce around and just check it out. Like, there's some interesting things in here that, again, I agree with. But then, you know, when you're talking about Indigenous services, the justice system, housing infrastructure and communities, Crown Indigenous relations and Northern affairs, I get really, but like there's some, like, everybody. Oh, here's the phrase I mentioned earlier. I just found it. Okay, to meet, this is the phrase about cost savings. To meet up to 15% in savings targets over 3 years. That's perfect corporate speak. Now I'm reading the Fisheries and Oceans. The Department of Fisheries and Oceans will wind down research and monitoring activities that have either achieved their objectives or for which alternative data sources exist. Like, it's perfect corporate speak of fuck you, you assholes are fired. I love it. That's what we'll end on. Hope you have a good day. Hope you had a good day. Hope you have a good day. See you tomorrow with what I would put in a populist budget of Canada, which is, it's going to be fun. I have a great idea for housing and agriculture. It's a fantastic idea. I absolutely love it. People are going to call me a socialist and communist for it. Go fuck yourself. See you tomorrow.